Hey everybody, this is B Mills for Days. We're going to try something new on the channel. This is going to be 3 dark web horror stories. Now, if you're interested in the dark web, that's good for you, but I would highly recommend not looking into that dark, deep corner of the internet. But here we go. As I sat alone in my dimly lit bedroom, surrounded by stacks of dusty books and creaking floorboards, I stumbled upon something that would change my life forever. It was an old laptop, tucked away in a forgotten corner of the attic, covered in cobwebs and grime. The screen was cracked and the keyboard was sticky with dried spills, but it still worked. And when I turned it on, I found myself sucked into a dark and terrifying world of the deep web. At first, everything seemed normal enough. I browsed through various forums and websites, reading about conspiracy theories and urban legends. But then, I stumbled upon a forum dedicated to the darkest corners of the internet. The posts were cryptic and ominous, speaking of ancient evils and forbidden knowledge. I dismissed them as mere fantasy, but one post caught my eye. It was a thread titled The Red Room, and the users claimed that it was a place where you could find anything your heart desired, but for a price. I laughed it off as ridiculous, but the curiosity got the better of me. I searched for the Red Room. After navigating through countless dead ends and fake links, I finally found it. The website was shrouded in darkness, and a low hum filled my speakers. A message popped up on the screen, inviting me to enter my request. I hesitated for a moment, wondering if this was some kind of prank or a trap. But my desire for adventure won out. I typed in my request. I want to see the most frightening thing imaginable. Then I hit enter. The room went black, and all I could hear was my own breathing. Suddenly, a figure appeared before me, tall and imposing, its face obscured by shadows. It spoke to me in a voice that sent chills down my spine, offering me a glimpse into the depths of a madness and terror. I tried to back away, but my feet felt rooted into the spot. The figure leaned closer, its breath cold and rank, and whispered something in my ear. I can never remember what it said, but I knew that it was the last thing I ever wanted to hear. When I finally woke up, I was laying in bed, drenched in sweat and trembling uncontrollably. My heart raced and my mind reeled with thoughts of what just happened. I knew that I'd been given a glimpse into a realm far beyond our reality, a place where sanity is lost and nightmares come alive. I vowed to never return to that accursed site, but even now, I know that I will never forget what I saw in the Red Room. When my friend first introduced me to the dark web, I was amazed at how such an unknown thing could house some of the most illegal things on earth. Up until today, I had only used it for learning how to code and commit small crimes. But after the horrifying videos I just found, I don't think I'll ever use the dark web again. I first met my best friend Alex a little bit after I got into high school. My parents had moved us to a new town and I had no friends. It was lonely at first, but I got used to it. We moved because they were paranoid after many murders occurred in my town. I thought this was weird, moving across the country over that, but I let it go. The reason Alex and I became friends so quickly was because we both had a shared interest in the internet and everything it had to offer. I was a gaming addict and a tier 3 Pokemon subscriber, while he was more of a coder and developer. 2 years later, we were still best friends, but now we were much older and smarter. Alex had discovered the dark web and he was obsessed with it. He pretty much spent every hour of the day on it, searching through anything you could imagine. There was nothing wrong with this, but one search he made was the biggest mistake of his entire life. I remember waking up to dozens of text messages from him one morning. This wasn't normal. Alex wasn't a very social person, and it was very hard to get words out of him. I opened my phone to see what the messages had to say. Dude, Jack, you have to come over right now. This is important. Jack, wake up. This is urgent. Where are you? These were only some of the messages, but the rest were very similar, with them all being urgent and that I needed to go to his house immediately. My parents were both still at work, so I went to Alex's house. When I arrived, there were 4 cop cars parked in front of his house, and there were dozens of people and news vans standing out front. I made my way through the crowd, and Alex's mother told the police to let me inside. I could see the tears rolling down her cheeks as she opened the door. What's going on, Miss Gonzalez? I asked. Alex is missing, she said and started crying. My heart sank. How could this happen? He just texted me earlier this morning. That is when it hit me. What if he was trying to warn me? What if his messages were related to his disappearance? Still in shock, I walked up to one of the detectives in the kitchen. Is Alex going to be okay? I asked. Of course he is. He's going to be just fine. We're going to find him very soon, the detective responded. Something about that response was off. It was like I knew he was wrong. Deep down, I had this slight feeling that I wasn't going to see him ever again. I remember the text messages, however, and pulled out my phone to show the detective. He texted me this morning. What if it has something to do with him going missing? I said. As he began reading them, his position quickly changed. It was like it got worse. He told me they needed to keep my phone for now to investigate the text messages, and said they would give it back to me later. I stayed around the house for a while, not just because I missed Alex, but because I wanted to comfort his parents. They cared about me a lot, and it hurt to see them like that. His mother couldn't stop crying. Eventually, however, I went into Alex's room to see if I could find anything that might give me a clue about why he went missing. I searched through everything, but I found nothing. But then I noticed something. Alex's computer was on, but his monitor was turned off. I looked for the button to turn it on and hit it. As the screen lit up, my heart sank. He was on the dark web. Obviously, this was normal, but for some reason, he had several of different tabs open. I knew this wasn't normal. So I closed the door, locked it, and began going through them. At first, it was all pretty usual for him. But then things started to get weird. He had a tab open that was an article about a murder that happened several years ago. The article said that it was a woman who was found dead in her apartment. Her body was mutilated, cut up, and covered in acid. I nearly threw up reading it and seeing the horrifying pictures on the crime scene. Not wanting to see any of it anymore, I switched the tab just to reveal another article about another murder. Confused, I quickly went through the rest of the tabs he had opened, and they were all the same thing. They were all about some type of murder or crime. The one that stuck out the most to me, however, was one about a murder that happened 2 years ago. At first it seemed pretty normal, but as I read further, I realized what it was. It was about the murder of our neighbor that prompted us to move away. Confusion quickly swept over me. How did Alex know about this? I never told him about it because to me, it wasn't that important. I figured it must have just been a strange coincidence. But then when I saw the last search, it was my last name. Horrified and confused, I quickly stumbled out of the room and back into the living room. "Is everything all right?" Alex's mother said. "Yeah, I just need to go home for dinner," I responded. On the way home, I had so many questions flowing throughout my mind. Why was he searching up my last name? Did he think that I had something to do with this? That must have been why he was texting me so frantically that morning. If only I could just explain to him that I didn't do anything wrong. But I couldn't. He was still missing, and I had to find out why. When I got home, I raced up to my room, slammed the bedroom door shut, and got on my computer. I loaded up my Tor browser and turned on my VPN. I knew what I had to do. I began typing my last name, becoming more nervous after every letter. When I finally hit enter, nothing happened. It was just a blank screen. Confused, I refreshed the page, but once again, there was nothing. Why did Alex search if there was nothing? I thought to myself, there must be something out there. I was getting ready to close out the tab thinking I had ran into a dead end, when suddenly the page started to load. It took several minutes, but finally it loaded to reveal hundreds of videos. Immediately I knew what they were. They were murders. But why did they show up when they searched my last name? I considered just stopping right there and turning back, knowing the horrifying things I would see if I continued on. But I couldn't. I knew this had to be why Alex went missing, so I clicked on the first video. As it started playing, I saw what looked like a woman strapped to a chair in some sort of basement or something. I quickly recognized who it was. It was our neighbor from 2 years ago. I could tell because she had the same heart-shaped tattoo on her neck. She sat there for a minute, struggling, panicking, and screaming for someone to help. However, suddenly 2 figures walked into the frame. At first, I couldn't tell who they were. But as they turned around to face the camera, my heart sank. It was my parents. My father was holding a knife while my mother was holding a small scalpel. They paused for a moment before they started what was the most horrifying 5 minutes of my entire life. I watched as they cut into her and listened as she begged for mercy, screaming the whole time. Blood filled the room as she took her last breath. When the video ended, it quickly went to another, revealing the same exact room and chair I'd seen before. I was traumatized by what I had already seen, and I knew I couldn't watch any more of it. My parents were murderers, and I now knew the reason we moved away 2 years ago. I knew there was something off about that, but I just never could have imagined that this was the horrifying secret that they had been hiding from me. This whole time, I thought Alex was trying to accuse me of being responsible for these murders, but I was so wrong. He was trying to warn me. I scanned through more of the videos, each in the exact same room with the same exact chair. I was just about finished, ready to go to the police so that I could tell them what I had just seen when I noticed something. There was a new video uploaded today on that website. I quickly clicked on it and pressed play to reveal what looked like a man this time, strapped to the chair. He had a sack over his face, and I could tell who it was. Once again, however, I saw my parents walk into the frame. My father walked up to the man and pulled the sack off his head. At first, I couldn't tell who it was, but then I realized who I was looking at. It was Alex. I had always been aware of the deep web. You hear the craziest, most fucked up stories from people who have the balls to explore it. Websites that involve human experimentation, hiring a hitman, and even watching people through their own security cameras. It's fucked up. But honestly, I'd be lying if I said I wasn't just slightly interested. Now, just to point out, there was no malicious intent behind my exploration of the deep web. I was just curious to see if it really was as bad as people said it was. The first thing I stumbled upon was a website extremely centered around death, which gave me a really uneasy feeling, so I didn't hang around that web page very long. It takes quite a bit to freak me out, so it's safe to say I was a little surprised that I couldn't even stomach the first website I clicked on. But hey, it's not supposed to be all unicorns and rainbows, right? Next, I clicked on a website that was dedicated to watching people through security cameras. Most of the screen showed empty living rooms and patios. Some of them even showed oddly filled rooms, like rooms that were packed with stuffed animals and eerily decorated with fucking Christmas lights and fake Santa Claus statues. Another screen showed a young lady doing yoga. That one had a lot of views. I didn't watch that one very long though. Something inside me just felt ill and wrong. Like, what was I doing? That's sickening. I shook my head, blinking away more curiosity before I hovered my mouse over the tiny X to close the window. Right before I pressed the mouse, I saw a blue link under a black screen that said, "Proceed with caution." I bit down on my back teeth, yelling internally to leave the page. Don't click the link. It's not worth it. It could be murder. What if it was someone skinning an animal or some shit like that? But then again, what if it wasn't? I don't know what the hell propelled me to move my mouse away from the video, hovering it over the link instead. That's where I ended up. My curiosity always got the best of me. And no matter how twisted my stomach felt, or how strong the feeling of dread was that lingered right over my head, I had to know. I really just had to know what the link led to, or I would go crazy until I finally figured it out. So I pressed my mouse down and watched the link turn purple. Felt my mouth go dry and watched as the screen slowly loaded. The page was just comprised of a large link. Like the security camera page, only it was just one. The room was concrete and it was dark. There must have been a night vision camera or something, because everything had a weird blue-green tint. But you could tell there was little to no light. There was a dark liquid on the floor and a medium-sized puddle. I told myself it was gasoline. Don't ask me why. Movement in the far right screen caught my attention, and I immediately perked in my desk chair, inching my face closer to the screen of the laptop. It looked like an arm, like someone's forearm. They were just standing there, not really moving, but swaying, just enough to not look completely still. "Hey," I said before shaking my head and slapping my mouth shut. Stupid. Then the person walked. They walked over towards the left of the screen. I felt my stomach knot, felt my throat tingle and tighten, bile rising in the back of my throat. I knew my mouth was open, gaping, and my eyes were wide, face screwed up. It was a young woman. She looked like she could not be older than 25 or so. Long, dark, dirty hair was in tangles, like she'd been pulling at it. Her leg was dragging, her other skinny leg doing most of the work as she limped weakly. Her head was down, looking at the floor. and the sound of her dragging foot across the concrete echoed in my room. I didn't think it could get any worse. I was so fucking wrong. Suddenly, the woman raised her head, and it looked like it weighed a ton on her tiny body. I hadn't noticed it before, only able to make out the side profile. But now it was clear as day. She looked around, eyes watering with tears and black makeup streaming down her face. Small strands of bloody red were intertwined in her lips. Messily tied, locking them together, dark blood stained on her chin, probably from where she tried desperately to open her mouth to scream. Before realizing she couldn't, her dainty fingers were strained as well. Same color as the puddle on the concrete. My whole body felt weak. My stomach was sick. I tried to tell myself it was fake, that it was all just a big hoax. My eye scanned to the bottom left of the screen, 5,623. That's how many people were watching. Unable to fight it any longer, I ran straight to the bathroom and threw everything up. Everything in me felt disgusting, wrong, and twisted. Once I was done, I laid on the floor in the bathroom, letting the cool towels try and soothe my burning body. My head was spinning. I kept repeating to myself over and over in my head that I shouldn't have clicked on that link. I should have just left. Shouldn't have fucking closed the window. Should I get the link and send it to the police? Should I call them? My first instinct was to copy and paste the link just in case, then call the police and inform them of what was happening. Maybe they could trace the IP address or something. Maybe they would recognize the girl and know where to start looking. Maybe I could save her life. I'd feel really fucking dumb if this was all fake just to get viewers. But I wasn't about to gamble, not with what was at stake. I ignored the dizzy feeling flooding in my head as I jumped up, grabbing the doorknob and twisting it a bit too harshly. When I flung the door open, my phone buzzed in my pocket, scaring the living shit out of me. I stopped mid-panic and picked it up with shaky hands. I saw my girlfriend's name and immediately answered. My voice was a complete wreck. My eyes finding the screen where the girl shrunk down to the ground. The sound of her cries bouncing around the room, making my body feel rigid. I had nothing left to throw up, but I still felt so sick. Madeline, you're not gonna believe what I just fucking saw. What? You? Are you okay? Have you been crying? No, I'm not okay, I answered, averting my eyes from the screen. I know you said to stay away from the deep web, but are you kidding me? Her voice went from caring to mad in a split second. I told you to stay away from that place. You never listen to me. You never fucking do. There's a girl, I said weakly. She's trapped in some sort of basement or something. Her mouth is like sewn shut. There's blood all over her face and hands. I don't know what to do, Madeline. The woman's cries got louder, more desperate but muffled. I'm so sorry. Close it out, clear your history, and never go back there again. I'm not kidding. But should I call? No. Her voice was stern now. You don't know if this is bullshit. It's probably staged to gain disgusting viewers, apparently like yourself. People do it all the time. That's why I said it'd be best if you stayed away from there. You could get yourself into a lot of trouble. I didn't say anything. Wordless. Walking back over to my desk, my hand shook as I raised my mouse to the small X once again. My eyes watched the number of viewers slowly tick higher and higher. Before I closed the window, I felt even worse than before. We can file a report tomorrow, just in case. But for now, go to sleep and stay the fuck away. Can't believe you even went on there in the first place. I didn't have the energy to argue with her. Guilt plagued my whole body, drowning me. It was all I could feel. I told her good night and that I was sorry and that I loved her before I hung up and made my way to the couch. Or try and sleep. It didn't feel right even being in my bedroom or anywhere near my computer. Not while that girl was still trapped, unable to scream for help, unable to talk at all. I know it could be fake, but was that really a risk I was willing to take? I looked up some Google searches over what was fake on the deep web and read multiple stories about staged webcam videos, which made me feel a little bit better. Didn't make the sick, guilty feeling go away, though. It's safe to say that I didn't get much sleep. Every time I closed my eyes or even began to drift off, I would see the woman's face. The thread laced into her lips, the blood stained on her mouth, her fingers, the floor. I continued to grow more and more anxious and uneasy, deciding that maybe getting out of the house, heading over to my local CVS and picking up some melatonin might help. I threw my blanket off, slid on my shoes, and grabbed my keys and wallet from the nightstand. The cool air felt amazing and did wonders to calm the whirlwind of thoughts in my head. I went to check the time, realizing I'd left my phone at home. Not a huge deal. The store is only a few minutes away from my house. I ended up buying melatonin and a stronger sleeping pill just in case those didn't work. I also got a pack of bottled water to help rehydrate after I vomited all night last night. By the time I got home, I felt much, much better, which lasted about 3 seconds before I noticed that my front door was wide open. Now, I may have been in a state of shock and panic, but I never leave my front door open or even unlocked. My heart immediately began to race. I got out the car, closing the door quietly, and unlocking my trunk, grabbing the crowbar that I kept in there. "Who's there?" I yelled into the house, waiting for any noise. Who is in here? My own voice was shaking and weak. I was met with complete silence, keeping the crowbar up and ready to strike. I walked to the couch and felt for my phone. As soon as I found it, I hit the emergency button and waited until I got a hold of a 911 operator, letting her know what I think my house was just broken into. She told me police are on the way. After checking around the house for anything odd, I decided to give my girlfriend a call, letting her know what had just happened. The phone rang, and then rang some more. After getting her voicemail, I hung up, knowing that she'd probably be asleep this late at night. I waited for about 20 or so minutes for the police to show up, and walking around with them like a scared puppy as they checked every room. They ended up just having me fill out a report, telling me they'll keep patrol cars around the area just in case anyone else gets hit. As they were leaving, I checked to see if Madeline had called back yet, but there wasn't any missed calls. However, I did notice several outgoing calls to her cell phone. Outgoing call to Madeline, 3:12 a.m. Outgoing call to Madeline, 3:14 a.m. Outgoing call to Madeline, 3:17 a.m. Outgoing call to Madeline, 3:20 a.m. Then there was another at 3:56 a.m., which was about the time I'd gotten home. My mind went into an automatic panic, knowing that for a fact I did not make those calls. I quickly checked my texts, reading one I'd apparently sent out at 3:23 a.m. Hey, can't sleep. Gonna come over. Mind leaving the back door unlocked so I can get in? Didn't send that message. My stomach dropped. My heart thudded loudly in my chest as I noticed her reply directly underneath. Sorry, I was sleeping. Thanks for waking me up, by the way. Lose your key again? It's unlocked. Don't be too late. Without a second thought, I jumped up, running to lock all the doors and windows in my house, keeping the crowbar tight in my hand as I ran to my car. I drove as fast as my little Civic would go, all the way to her house, ignoring any stoplights. It took me only 3 minutes to get there, but I knew I was still too late. I made my way to her back door, feeling every cell in my body burn when I saw that it was wide open. My face was hot, my hands were shaking, but I stepped in, crowbar raised like a bat, ready to swing. I tried to keep my emotions at bay as I looked around her dark house. Madeline, I called out. Are you okay, babe? Nothing. Silence. Madeline? A small scream came from her bedroom, from upstairs. My legs jerked to run as I flew up the stairs, slamming her door open. I looked at her empty bed, her empty room, confused. I heard the scream again, only this time I heard that it was coming through her computer monitor. I felt numb as I looked at the screen, noticing the same website I saw earlier. Only instead of the woman I saw two. The first was lying on the floor, not moving, in that puddle of dark liquid. I recognized the second girl, just as I had recognized her voice. My heart shattered as I saw her face, streaked in blood. The same threading was sewn into her eyelids, locking them shut. Her scream hit my bones, surrounded my body. It was all I could hear. Her face was twisted in pure terror. I cried. I cried. I cried. I locked my jaw, picking up my cell phone and calling 911 for the second time. Only this time, it barely rang once, before the deep, gravely voice of another man answered. You should not have called. Chills shot down my body as I heard the phone thud as it hit the carpet floor. My breath hitched in my throat as I bent to pick the phone up, hanging up the call, and racing down the stairs. How did he do that? How did he redirect my call away from the police? I felt my heart race as I darted out of her back door. In a frenzy as I sprinted to the closest house, I pounded on the door, screaming at the top of my lungs until the neighbor opened it. Her face was tired, confused, and scared. She let me in, and I explained through frantic tears what was happening. I'm typing this on my phone to post as we both try to get a uphold of the cops, but neither of our calls are going through, and neither is her landline. I think someone is messing with our cellular signal, and they may have cut her line. But we're gonna keep trying. I'm scared for me. I'm scared for my girlfriend, and I'm scared for my neighbor. I don't know what's gonna happen to me. If you don't hear from me again, please take this advice and this experience to heart. Stay away from the deep web. For fuck's sake, please stay from the deep web.